Hey, Alvin, good morning. I just made you the host, so if everything is okay, you can switch on your camera and be in full control, so you can share slides or anything you want.
Okay, all right.
Hey, good to see you.
Good afternoon or good morning.
Yeah, so which time zone are you in?
I'm in the China Beijing time zone, so it's 4 p.m. So yeah,
Great,
mid-afternoon.
great. Hey, thanks for joining. Really a big pleasure to have you.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we'll have fun. Let me send a little welcome note to everyone. It'll starting in 2 minutes. Please, if you have questions. It was a bit of a hassle to get the right date and right time with Teresa and, and
yeah, but it all worked out. I'm glad we figured it out before it became a problem. So
yeah, just in time. Yesterday, suddenly everything erupted with the potential dates, but no, I think
there was a daylight savings change a couple weeks ago, so that probably affected some of the original timing. So
made it more difficult. Okay, so we'll start in 1 minute, and we have 314 people signing up. Practically, that means that 25% or 30% will join live, and then the rest will opt to watch later. But I think that's fine, and hopefully, of course, and more people will watch it afterwards.
sounds good.
Okay, let's go. So it's 10 o'clock here. Alvin, what's the time there?
4 p.m.
4 p.m.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good afternoon. And good morning to everybody listening. Alvin, thanks for joining, and it's a great pleasure to have you. We've been in touch over email, communicating also through Doug, who's a friend from both of us. And I think so far the emails have already been quite insightful, but I'm super happy that we have you here live. Lots of questions. I have 10 questions prepared. It's different for the listeners who join more often. It's different than the normal webinars. We don't do a full presentation. We did those already with other speakers, and I think with Alvin, it's more fun to actually just ask questions and get some of the richness of your experience on the ground, because that's what I'm after, Alvin. So to actually hear that.
Sounds good. I prefer more interaction, so this is good because doing speeches, it gets a little boring after a while. So
yeah, I imagine. Can we start with the very simple question? So how did you get involved into this space? So XR or AR, VR. So where's the passion coming from, and how did you get in?
So I think I was very fortunate that during my undergrad years, so in 1991, I was able to join Tom Furness's HIT lab, so the Human Interface Technology Lab at the University of Washington. And he was, a lot of people consider him the grandfather of VR. He's been doing VR for probably 56, 57 years now. He was originally with the US Air Force and helped to create the super helmets and super cockpits and a lot of that technology. And then later on did quite a bit of research in various fields related to VR, have hundreds of PhD students that have followed him on his path. So I guess I was fortunate that I was able to be exposed to XR at the time, or actually VR, and being able to try those products, even though it was in the early 90s, it was very I guess archaic technology compared to what it is today. But even then, it inspired me because it showed me what's possible in a spatial environment. And it really showed me what the future is going to look like. I was probably a little optimistic. I remember in my paper I wrote, in 10 years everybody will be using this to educate the world, and it's going to be a super effective means for kind of disrupting education. 30 years later, fast forward, we're still not there yet, but I think we're getting close. The technology that we have now is much easier to use, much more high fidelity, and much less expensive. I mean, the devices I used was probably together about $300,000 or $400,000 to have one device, hand tracking, workstation. But now here, I'll show you. I mean, our latest device. Our latest device is here, and it's the size of a sunglasses.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yeah, and that has I think I calculated it was something like 100 times the resolution, and 1/10 the weight, or maybe less than 1/10 the weight, and I think like 1/400th the price. So it's definitely changed quite a bit in the last 30 years.
And so you've been in this space already for 30 years, for your entire career.
Well, no, I was exposed to it 30 years ago, but in the middle, I've done quite a few other things in the internet space, in the mobile internet space, in the PC space. So I've been very fortunate to have kind of lived through the multiple technology revolutions the last several decades. But about 7 years ago, I got back into the space when I was contacted by HTC, and to join them before they had the product launch for the Vive. And when I was exposed to it again, I was like, oh wow, the technology is now ready. It's now ready for prime time. It kind of stagnated for about 20 years. So I have to be honest. Not that much happened between kind of the mid 1990s to the kind of mid 2015 or so. Not that much had happened. But around the time, 2016, 2015, when Vive and Oculus came out with their new products, it really was the beginning of a new chapter for this technology.
Amazing, so I have to be honest. I don't have the Vive at home. I have an Oculus at home, and for me it was the moment, because of the price and the standalone headset. It was the first moment that we decided, hey, now at $300, I think it was, that's a good moment to jump in, right? It's easy to try, quality is good enough. So I can see that from a consumer point of view, why now suddenly the interest could be there. Hey, can I zoom in for a second on education? Because I heard you say this will educate the world, and that's also the area where we connect on, I think, in terms of passion. Why do you think this will revolutionize education?
Because if you think about what VR and XR is essentially a replacement for our senses, right? So it is a multimodal model of taking information that's on a computer and putting it into our brains using the natural pathways that we've evolved over the last several million years as a species. And so it's essentially the most direct way to communicate information without actually doing it or being there, right? And our brain has been, I guess, trained in a way that is the most efficient way for us to both gather information and remember information, and remember it in a way that it's as if we did it as an experience, versus just, if you just saw something on the screen, you feel like, oh, I saw something. But when you experience something in VR, you think, I actually did it. I was there, right? You have presence. And that leaves a much deeper mark on you in multiple ways, in emotional ways, in the neural pathways that connects that information to your actions and to the information that you were absorbing. In fact, we just had a study that came out last week from Tsinghua University that we worked with them. All we did was provide them the equipment. But the professor there essentially was saying, for children between 8 and, I think we had children between 8 and 12, when they did a study, it was only 15 kids, but we focused on teaching them positive mental attitudes. So teaching them more tolerance, better communication, and more cooperation with their peers and with their classmates. And we did it by putting them into a VR environment for 1 hour a day to interact with what they thought was a AI NPC. So they didn't know we actually had another researcher in another room who played this character and talked with them. But essentially we had them interact with something that they thought was fake. Was just a computer. But after a month of interaction, we essentially like they tripled their interests or their psychological attitude based on these kind of the profile medium or profile metrics that they were using in terms of the tolerance for individuals, for differences of people, for differences of races, and they're like twice as interested in communicating, and also 3 times more as interested in cooperating with people to actually get things done and try to do things themselves. I think Chinese kids, because very few of them have siblings, these are actually skill sets that are very, very important. A lot of young people lack. And what's more interesting is that we then asked their parents and the researchers to fill out another form in the beginning and the end of the event, or of the study, the 1-month study. And we asked them, based on a number of different criteria, kind of what have their behavior changes been. And for, it was about like twice as much level of tolerance, the less having tantrums, more willing to help out in the family, to clean up the house. All these things that we try to teach them in VR, they actually learned and then demonstrated it in the real world. So I think that's really powerful, because it changes your beliefs, right? And people talk about VR as a empathy machine, right? In terms of being able to get into somebody else's shoes and understanding their perspectives. If we let more people spend more time in VR and expose them to other cultures, other languages, other histories, other people interaction, they start to become more accepting of everybody else around them and understanding them. And I think that's going to reduce long-term conflict between people. With what's happening right now with Ukraine and Russia, I mean, if hopefully in the future these kind of things will be less and less as we start to see each other as friends, family, and not as enemies, and not as subsidiaries or colonies. In which case, we will want to not inflict harm on anybody else. You're not going to inflict harm on your friends, right? And I think that's what this technology can allow. Is it allows anybody who's even on the other side of the earth, who've never even met, if they spend enough time together interacting in a virtual space, they will feel like they're friends. And I'm actually very hopeful about the potential of this technology. I'll give you an example in a more direct sense. We work with the Axon. They're the maker of the taser, kind of non-lethal, weapons for police officers. And given the need to kind of keep people from being overly harmed more than they should be, we actually created a training system in VR to allow those officers to actually use these devices in a virtual space and then be on the other side of it. So where they are now being arrested or harassed by police officers, and then how do they feel? How are they going to react? And,
because you can do that role play. You can switch to be the other side. Yeah.
Yeah, and coming out of it now, they're much more understanding. They're much less wanting to bring out their gun. They would much rather take out a taser as a way to subdue somebody, even if it's a dangerous person, because they don't want, they've seen what it's like to be on the other side, right? And they also see what it's like to see the family members of people who were shot. It's just there's just a lot of emotional triggers that can be activated when you put somebody into an environment versus just seeing a video or reading a report. So this technology triggers the most fundamental aspects of our brain, and I think that's what makes it such a powerful teaching machine. But I think it can also be used for danger, right? So I think that's the other side, is that if there's bad actors, if they want to instill hate, if they want to instill intolerance, if they want to instill violence, that can also be taught. So I think this, every technology has that kind of a dual-edged sword potential. So I really hope that our society, leverages the benefits and the advantages of technology for good versus the potential dangers, and recognizes those dangers ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fascinating. So as you know, I'm a psychologist, and so this whole compassion training, and even for simple tasks like giving feedback at work, right? Even there's so much I think that can be improved.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like for other, like next to the social skills and compassion and feedback, there are probably other areas where this will also impact education. And I'm just trying one out.
We actually did a study on this, and we found that for language learning, it was, I think, 2 to 3 times faster to learn a language because you're in an immersive environment. For sports learning, they were showing, I think, 40 or 50% increases in skill set versus people who just learned, kind of on paper or with just drills, right? For information and history and memory training, they were also showing multi-X improvements. One of the biggest things we found was that the focus of the student was increased by 6 times. Versus normal classroom or versus video classroom type education. Because when you're watching a Zoom call and your teacher's 50 miles away, you might turn off your camera, look at your phone, check your messages, read your email while you're listening. So you're not really focused. Even a lot of people who attend our business meetings, and maybe who's watching this telecast, probably is doing something else at the same time. But when you're in VR, the benefit of it is that you're focused. You're 100% focused because you're not seeing anything else, right? In some ways, people say, oh, that kind of locks you out of the rest of the world. But when you're educating, you want to be focused, because that's the best way for you to absorb and learn, is when your brain is 100% on attention on that particular topic. So I'm a big advocate for education as a key application of the technology, more so than the entertainment and gaming aspect.
Yeah, amazing, and I love that angle. And so would your view be that, let's say, if the cost of hardware goes down and the glasses become more accessible and easy to use for everybody, that in 10 years a lot of kids would have a pair of these glasses in their pocket for certain.
I don't think it will take 10 years. I mean, these glasses here, it's $400 or $500, right? So it's the average student in China, I think the government spends something like about $3,000 a year on the average student for their total cost. The average student in America is something like 15,000. The average student in some parts of Northern Europe is like $24,000 a year for the average public school student. Right? So I think a $400 or $500 device for them to get quality education and to have them be able to access a new form of spatial-based learning, it's a lot cheaper than what they're paying today. If they say, hey, maybe now we do only 2 days of school in school classes and 3 days at home class. But now you get to have teachers from Harvard that you go take, professors that you train with, or professors from Stanford or Beijing University or whatever, right? Whoever your favorite professor is. And now, instead of just taking a field trip to the local zoo, now we get to take a field trip to Mars, right? I mean, these kind of things makes that few $100 really feel like it's negligible. And it is affordable today. It's not something that takes 5-10 years. I think that's, a lot of people think this is really far away. The reality is that this technology is I won't say it's perfect yet. We're kind of like maybe the first version of the iPhone, right? The first version of the iPhone was not a perfect product, right? It had no app store. It didn't have 3G. It had like clunky little tiny screen. A lot of things wasn't perfect, but it was easy to use and it was relatively affordable, right? And it kind of served your basic need of going on the web and making calls and then playing music, right? That was all I could do. But I think right now we're kind of at that version 1.0 of a smartphone type technology for this, right? So where you can think of where 2022 is kind of like 2007 in the mobile space. If you see what happened in the first year of the iPhone, they sold something like 6.6 million units of the iPhone. The last year, all the VR devices combined was something like 11 million units. So we're already selling more unit than the iPhone did the first year. And within 3 or 4 years, the iPhone was selling like 100 million units. That's also the prediction, I think, that Statista just published about the 2025 or 26. They're predicting 100 million units of VR devices.
Yeah.
So I think we're on that same trajectory. And yeah, it will not take 10 years, is what I'm saying.
Indeed, before this conversation, I was looking at those market projections, right? And also the analogy with smartphones, because I've seen you also speak about it a bit, like the same kind of adoption rates for smartphones, which was like 50% year-on-year growth, right, for a period. And now we have 1.5 billion smartphones sold every year. I think it's dipping a bit, at least in the COVID years. But essentially, you're thinking that we'll have a similar trajectory with XR devices, right?
I think about this, right? If you have a device, this is the first generation thin and light device, and it's 100 and something grams. In another few years, we're going to get to fairly like normal glasses type, under 100 grams and much thinner, much lighter, mostly powered by, in the cloud computing. So you don't have much computing on the device. And it hopefully will last, most of the day, right? If you have a high resolution screen on your face in front of you that can be both transparent or opaque, so you can have VR and AR mode, why would you need any other screen? Why would you need a desktop screen? Why would you need to pull something from your pocket anymore? It doesn't make sense. That screen will be your primary interaction device.
And that AR VR delta, because I've had a couple of conversations with, for example, with the chief digital officer for Coop, the retailer, and he told me, hey, this is all AR, right? So if you go into a shop like a supermarket, of course it has to be AR because you need to see the products and then you see a digital.
Yeah. So I think I hear people say, oh, what's going to be the winner, AR or VR? I think that's a moot discussion. It's actually pointless because we will not have two devices, right? We will have a single device. It will transfer back and forth between the modes. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I was having a conversation with one of our invested companies who specializes in this space. I can't talk too much, but they essentially have a super high resolution, like close to retinal resolution per eye on super thin glasses that are that can switch modes. So when you have that, it's still they're probably a few years away from going to market. But when you have that, there is no reason to pick. You just use it the way you need to, right? You're going to have glasses, and that glasses will give you the information you need instantly when you need it. And what that will do is that it essentially turns every human into a super intelligent being, right? Right now, we kind of are already a cyborg because we have a phone that's kind of tied to our waist that we bring out every I think 300 times a day or something. Something's crazy.
344 times a day.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't think that's a very healthy thing. I think that's too many times that you're relying on a device in your pocket. But the fact that if you have it in your head, then instantly, whenever I see anything, I think of anything, I talk to anybody, the information I need is instantly there, right? I will never forget anybody's name anymore. We'll never have the awkward moment you go into a conference and you're like, oh, hi, yeah, good to see you. And you're trying to think like, who is this person? You'll never have that anymore because that face recognition system on it will tell you, oh, this is who you've met with him when, here's a picture of their last, Facebook profile picture or their vacation picture, whatever, right? So that just for more of the social context, but I think the fact that we are always trying to know more information, right? The thing that separates humans from every other animal that makes us successful is our brain, is our ability to take information and then use it to make better decisions. Mm-hmm. So if you have this device that is helping you, constantly giving you the most important information you need, and then guiding you to make the best decision. If I'm going to cook something, I was like, oh, what is that recipe? And they would just tell you exactly how to do it. If you're running and you're late for a meeting, you're like, oh, how do what's the best route to get to this place? Or if I'm going to I don't know, make a decision on a purchase, so like, what is the current price on this product, right? So I'll have all the information I need instantly. And if if I'm a student, I won't be spending all my time memorizing formulas. I will be spending my time thinking, what is the right question to ask, so that I can get to the core of the problem that's being put in front of me, right? So I'm very optimistic about this technology to make us much more intelligent and much more productive.
And much more compassionate, right? So that's
and much more compassionate, yeah.
I mean, with instant translation and emotion recognition and everything that could be inside of the glasses, I guess.
Yeah, and then there's some people who actually has a tough time recognizing emotional cues. So if the AI system can say, oh, I feel like Renz is a little bit frustrated with you. Maybe you should speak slower, or maybe you should be nicer to him, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that could be a cue for people, especially for people with psychological issues. Whether they anger too easily, or whether they just for various reasons, people have emotional deficiencies. I think this device could help to supplement other types of therapy, so it doesn't have to be using pills all the time to control their emotions.
And this is of course happening in a regular customer service. There will be emotion classifiers inside these systems, right? So it's technically already happening at scale in companies, but that it would make it sort of
actually, one of our biggest customer groups right now is actually corporate training for both like customer service training and also a human resource type training, so that you face kind of customers are super upset. And then you have to find a way to control your emotions as you contact these people, and be able to resolve their issues, right? So it's it's definitely a technology that can benefit a lot of people in many industries.
Yeah, hey, Alvin, that vision that you shared along the way, and I think it's very intriguing, and I saw it in some presentations that you gave before, that let's say many screens to one. So first we had just one television, and now we have a laptop, a tablet, a smartwatch, a smartphone, and your vision, I think, is that it will go back again to one screen, which you already mentioned. But then my underlying question is, like, in terms of the market, and because of course you have these screens, they come from different players, you have different brands. So how do you see that sort of play out in the market? Because it's quite a vision with a lot of impact, I think.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at every, I guess, technology industry, when things first start, there's always a proliferation of a lot of brands and a lot of offerings. And over time, they consolidate. There's going to be, 2 or 3 players that own probably 70–80% of the market. But they will be somewhat compatible with each other, and people will just choose based on their preference for style or price or quality, because nobody will be the best in everything, and they will find the product that meets their needs, and the market will drive different winners based on their ability to deliver on these customers' requirements. So I'm not I don't know who's going to be the winner, right? I don't know if the players who are the winners in the phone space today are going to be the winners in this future XR space. If you look at who are the key winners in the PC space, really none of them, except I guess Apple, are still in the mobile space, right? So I think some of those players may still continue from the phone to this XR space, but there will definitely be new players created. Just like every technology revolution that we've had in the last several hundred years. So
so you think technically it's similar to trajectories we've already seen with other devices. Well, is that correct? And what I'm saying, looking at you.
I think that's true. And in fact, I think my prediction was that in another 30 years or so, we go back to no screens, because 120 years ago we had no screens. and we none of us remember that, but you know, we until the theater screen came, that was actually the biggest screen, but the first screen, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't have any screens in our lives. The only screens that we had was a window that we look through when we look out the outside the house. But you know, now, yeah, we have probably 6, 7, 8 screens that I interact with every day. Mm-hmm. Now, but I think you know, at some point we're going to go to a point where we start putting chips into our head or contact lenses in our eyes, and it feels like we don't have any screens, right? Mm-hmm. We may have virtual screens that we can create, kind of screens that are virtually placed in different places, but there's really the screen is a artifact, is a artificial artifact that we created for ourselves. This is not a human, it's not a human, a natural thing that we see around us, right? So you know, I think it's only natural over time we get back to where we have no screens again, but we will be able to have as many virtual screens as we need to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love the vision. I'm very curious. I'm mostly curious for the market dynamics that will bring, because then being the seller of that one screen, of course, like would make you a really valuable player.
Yeah. I mean, I feel a little bit scared in terms of the influence of that company, right, or of those few companies, because you know, anything that gives you a direct connection to the brain means that you can influence these people in very unique ways. So I really hope you know, there are proper regulations put in place before we get to that kind of mass adoption, so that you know, these technologies are not misused, because you know, it's going to be the best education machine, but it's also going to be the best brainwashing machine, right, or the best propaganda machine. So whatever, you know, or the best advertising machine, you know. So you know, it's something that can definitely be misused, but I hope that we choose to use it in its you know, most I guess positive and advantageous ways.
Yeah, same here. Hey, I have another question where I'm sure you know way more than the average listener to this. When I spoke to Doug 2 weeks ago, he mentioned he's a hardware guy, and so he's waiting for specific elements to change in the hardware that he thinks will lead to mass adoption. Right. So he mentioned Qualcomm chips 2 years from now, weight going down to like 180 grams for the glasses.
No, these are already 180 grams. So
these are 180 grams. So here you go.
I think we will get under 100 grams in the next few years. So for sure, I don't think that I mean the weight is going to increasingly become smaller and smaller. I mean, and just a couple weeks ago, I think Mojo Vision showed some new press release of their contact lens, and I actually tried that 2-3 years ago, and you know, it was very early version then, and it was only black and white. But you know, now they have a much more fuller, you know, with eye tracking, with all kinds of other capabilities built in. But you know, we're going to get, you know, weight is not going to be a constraint over time.
But what do you think are the key sort of, if you look at that theoretical adoption curve, right? We have a couple of, and I heard a couple of hints. I heard, you know, sort of photorealistic glasses. I heard there needs to be one killer app, right? Like the Facebook of XR. Or I heard people say, no, it's only, it will have mass adoption when Apple jumps in, because then it's everybody with an iPhone will just switch their device to an Apple device. So what is your view on when is this inflection happening?
I mean, I think the inflection will happen in the next three years or so. You know, I published a little kind of forecast chart of our time in XR versus other medium. I think I said 2026 is when we start to see a very dramatic increase in time. So I can send you a picture of it later if you need to. But you know, I think that's kind of maybe 2 generations from now, right? I think you know, this is last year's product. In another year or 2, you know, this will be kind of twice the resolution or something, and then in another, and maybe half the weight, and then another generation from that, it'll be, you know, kind of retinal resolution, and then you know, probably about 2/3 the weight of the prior generation, right? So it's going to be really a product that you won't feel like you're wearing an extra device, right? I think when we get to where people, I think 60% or something of the world actually wears glasses or contacts, some kind of corrected vision, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very sizable portion of the population that already is used to having something on their face, essentially 15, 16 hours a day. We're going to get there. It'll probably take the next 10 years for us to get there. But when we get to products where it gets to glasses type form factor, and it lasts most of the day, and it's 6 degrees of freedom, and it doesn't even have to be retina resolution. I feel like retina resolution, a lot of people are very hung up on it, but honestly, our brain fills in the gap a lot more than we think. I mean, our ability to see retina resolution is only like a couple of degrees of your full view, right? Yeah. So it's a little tiny dot that you can see clearly. Everything else is blurred. So, we will be able to achieve, I think, a quality product that allows you to have that all-day experience in the next 5-6 years. And I'm pretty optimistic that that's going to be a sea change. And I don't know if it's going to come from Apple or from Microsoft or from
you guys,
or wherever, right? Yeah. So and honestly, I think all of these companies are all working towards the same goals. So I think it's actually good that there are multiple companies doing it, because I don't think any one company should be dominating this industry too much, because it is such an important industry. It will be our window to the world, right? It is kind of our last screen. So let's make sure that it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. So I'll just say that.
I love those words, our last screen, right? So indeed, it is a super fascinating story. Question on, if I may, on because you're calling in from Beijing, I'm calling from Amsterdam, and I think the roles are also quite different, right? Whether it's US or Europe or China, and my sense here is, and I haven't visited any factories, I haven't seen it, but my sense here is that China is moving a bit faster than at least Europe, and that also the applications are a bit different. And could you speak on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think each market has their kind of adoption curve, right, and interest level in terms of adopting new technology. But China's been transitioned very quickly from kind of initially in 2016 was much more about entertainment and gaming, and then by about 2018 it transitioned to becoming much more about B2B and education and training. Simulation, design, so all the non-gaming aspects actually was probably about 70 to 80% of the sales that are driven here. Now I think over time it will come back again, where consumers start coming back in when the devices get cheaper, when more funner, bigger AAA apps or games are available, or the next TikTok or Facebook of VR becomes available. But right now, what we find is that more of our sales are going to non-gaming related use. And I feel like that's actually probably a positive scenario, because what that shows is this technology is now being adopted beyond a single vertical, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at whether you're talking about cars or computers or planes or mobile phones, they didn't start immediately in consumers. They actually started in commercial use, right, or military use. And then later on, when the prices became affordable, when the software became more usable, then the consumers started using it. The first most popular smartphone was not the iPhone, it was actually the BlackBerry. And the BlackBerry was essentially just an email device, right, for business users. It didn't have any games on it, but it sold millions of devices. So I think we will see this, where China will probably be the first country in the world, I think, that will have a true metaverse experience. Mm-hmm. One is because I think the Chinese citizens are actually more open to new technology and adopting new technology. And there's a lot of young people that just, whatever new thing comes, they just want to try it, right?
That's right.
But the other thing is, I think for the metaverse to really take off, it has to have standardization. It has to have universal standards in terms of access, in terms of ID systems, in terms of currency systems, in terms of device compatibility. And China, the one good thing about China, about a more centralized government, is that once policies are given, they get adopted very quickly, right? And within like a few months of the Chinese government saying, okay, we need to limit gaming to children. Now every kid cannot play more than like 3 hours a week of these big online games, and it just happened instantly.
Right? So it's also the speed of regulation that's different, right?
Yeah, and now if you want to be a social network user, you have to use your real ID. You cannot use some anonymous ID because they don't want people spreading fake news or creating hate on social networks. So if you are acting as yourself, then you're going to be more cognizant of what you say. Right. Yeah. And I think you see a lot of people on Twitter, on whatever various social networks, they start trolling or flaming people because nobody knows who they are, and they can just create an account and they can create a bot, right? And in China, pretty much they got rid of all the bots, right? And everybody that's on there is tied to a real ID. And so you know what you say. Now there some people say, oh, but that's a surveillance state, and there's no privacy. That's probably true. So there's a two-sided of everything. But I think that does create a lot less hatred, a lot less negativity, and it also, I think the privacy that a lot of Western users or Western audiences think they have are probably not as private as they really have. Right. I mean, the government there in every country is already monitoring them. Google's monitoring them. Facebook is monitoring them. TikTok or Microsoft, they're all monitoring them, right? And that information can be accessed anytime the government says, I want to see it. They can see that information. So really the difference, there's not that much difference in terms of true privacy. Right?
But the difference would then be that there are already a couple of very clear sticks in the ground in China, for example, with having a real ID in a metaverse environment, which I think here, I'm not sure if that regulation exists, but I do know that when we did the polling in some other webinars, that a lot of people expressed that they were very comfortable with a lot of the other avatars being AI agents and not being human. So here it seems like we are getting comfortable to the idea that maybe you're talking to things that are non-human.
Well, no, I think there's two different things going on. One is, if you are a human, we want you to be a real human, and we want you to be identified to a real person. But there's definitely going to be tons of AI NPCs, right? There's going to be tons of NPCs that are driven by algorithms that will interact with you, because you're not always going to have enough, people in these virtual environments to play the roles. That if you go to a virtual bar, you're not going to have somebody go and actually sit back there and be a bartender. Some people may actually choose, that may actually be a job someday, a virtual bartender, but it will be an AI bot that is acting as that agent to interact with you, right? But the person sitting next to you will be a real person, right? So the other customers will be real customers. So I think that's the part. Yeah. So I think we will definitely have a combination of interactions with both AI NPCs as well as humans. But the key is we probably want to be able to identify, okay, this person has a little AI on top of his head that says, okay, this is a bot, right? And this person is a real person. So I know how I'm being interacted with, or if somebody is a bot and is an advertising, then they should actually have a little note that says, I'm an advertising. Right. Yeah. So you don't have somebody sitting next to you at a bar saying, hey, maybe you should buy this drink, or hey, I got a stock tip for you, or whatever, when really they're trying to sell you something. Right. So you should know when you're being spoken to by a bot versus by a human. Right. I think those kind of regulations are going to be enacted probably fairly early in the phase for China versus the rest of the world. You look at like in terms of currency, I think there needs to be a common currency. In China, it's already set. It's essentially the digital RMB, right? So it's the ECNY. And there may be ways to convert between that and other cryptocurrencies or other CBDCs that are in the rest of the world. But I think what we will find is that most countries will at some point enact a CBDC. And I think CBDCs will actually be the main currency across all the metaverses. And then there may be some cryptos that are being used for non-local affiliated businesses, right? But if you want to be able to collect taxes, if you want to be able to recognize revenues, you need a currency that is managed by the government, right? Otherwise, how do you collect taxes, right? So if somebody buys something on the internet and there's no taxes being collected, some government's going to think, oh, I'm missing out, right? Either the buyer or the seller, one of those governments are going to want to have a piece of that. Right. And if you look at this Citibank just came out with their new forecast for the total available size of the market in 2030 was like $13 trillion. That's more than half the size of the total US GDP. So if you're looking at a 10% tax, that's $1.3 trillion of taxes that are being wasted if the governments don't enact some kind of a CBDC model.
Clear, and love that part. Actually, it's very intriguing. I was thinking about taxation in the metaverse for a while, and I didn't get to a clear story yet. But this is helpful. Hey, with respect to your time, because I promised you we would take 45 minutes, and we have taken 44 minutes. So I'll ask you one more question. And it's I think the only way I could respectfully close this conversation. Is there anything I should have asked? Anything you should have said that I haven't asked?
I guess my advice to your listeners, right? I think you owe it to yourself to spend more time to try to understand this technology, right? Whether you believe the metaverse is going to be the key or not, whether you believe XR or AR is going to be the future interface or not, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your children, you owe it to society to learn more about it. Because at some point, this technology will become a very important part of your daily lives and your children and grandchildren's daily lives. So encouraging them and encouraging yourself to learn more about it so that you can make your own choices. Right, whether or not this technology is for you, whether or not you should, if you're young, maybe learning how to program in 3D, learning how to use game engines, learning more about AI, learning about how to do spatial design, learning about human interface design for 3D environments, learning about game design, learning about virtual production, whatever, right? I think if you're an artist, this is also an amazing medium for you to express yourself, because we've been limited. Both my parents are artists. So my dad's a painter and a photographer, and my mom is a ballet dancer. And so I've been exposed to art my entire life. But I feel like, they've been limited by a 2D canvas, right? And my mom less so with the dancing, but I think for most artists, you give them this new 3-dimensional, multi-color, you can actually have additional dimensions and interaction levels in art and creative design. I think it opens up new neural pathways that weren't available to us before. And it'll make us actually more creative people. And as AI becomes more strong and more important in our daily lives, we will probably spend less time doing monotonous daily tasks and more time doing creative tasks. So, using this medium as a way to increase creativity. We actually did a study, I think it was a big university, that also showed kids who were given a 3-dimensional way of doing design versus kids that just had a piece of paper and said, make something. The level of products that they came out with, these were like 10-year-old kids, and they came out with some amazing things that you just wouldn't think was possible at that age, right? So it just, I think we should encourage our children or our grandchildren to spend more time understanding the technology. That's my kind of last word.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you don't, you're going to regret not being part of this next generation.
Mm-hmm. And with that, limiting your freedom of choice, right?
Yeah.
Much you want to know about it. Yeah.
You know, because like I'll give you an example. Like my mom, every couple of days I'll get a call from her saying, "Oh, my iPad's broken. Oh, something's wrong." I'm like, "Oh, there's a button to turn on this thing to turn on the audio." Or
same here.
Going to the setting. I mean, you know, for that generation, they weren't exposed to this, and it's made them not be able to interact with, you know, like if they wanted to talk to their grandchildren on FaceTime, she doesn't know how to do it, right? She can only take calls. She doesn't know how to start calls. You know, things like that, where we really should allow people of all ages to get into the technology, because it is such a natural way of interacting that it uses all the normal senses that we already have in our daily lives. We don't have to train people how to use their hand or their voice or their eyes or walking around. And that actually opens up computing and opens up virtual experiences to a bigger audience and to a younger audience much earlier than they are today. You don't have to learn how to type to use this technology.
Mm-hmm. Clear. I think that's the best way to end this chat, Alvin. It was a great pleasure. So thanks for being here, and out of respect for your time, I'll let you go. But I have a million more questions, maybe for some other day. But
we can do another session in a maybe half a year or something when there's more more major developments.
So, let's do that. Let's do that. Thanks, Alvin.
Okay. Hey, thanks, friends. Have a good evening or good rest of your day.
Yeah. You too. Bye.
Bye.